There was a button that was popular among the Traffickers Association in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that goes by the name of the Thomas Merton Center. They publish the New People and are very watchful of new people. The button was a peace movement button that made #1 in their button rack. It was to study war no more. Problem is that one of the biggest wars that has ever been processed was noticed by nobody. It was tabled and shelved. James Thurber, people don't understand what's going on around them. Magna cum thaws of Harvard made wiggle room in his presentation and remarks, notoriously subliminally elucidating this cause. Pointed out James Thurber's fable for our times had a moral in one of them: don't get it right, get it written. For one thing, that's what's going on. Somebody got in Trump's menagerie, Mar-a-Lago, got the incredible consciousness on drugs of some sort, Abby Martin or somebody, that if you surrounded the issue on all sides with your puppet show, you could talk from the left, you could talk from the right, you could talk from the center, you could talk from all sides, and simply leave out the basic facts. So the idea is don't care what you say, just be sure you occupy the position that is enabled to say it. Growing up in the city of Pittsburgh, one of the things that I learned early on was how strange it was that very significant, shadowy, violent, warlike events were taking place in the streets of East Liberty. And there was no way you could hammer down the doors of KDKA radio, TV downtown in Gateway Center to get them noticed. Once we took a field trip to Washington, D.C., and I kept thinking how far away Congress was from what is really going on in the United States. How would you explain to them what had happened? They're happy as a bird in their fishbowl. Well, I was probably in ninth grade when I went to the Friends Meeting House where I met Leanne, Ellison, Norman. She right away made clear that she was standing in arrest mode relative to me, that what she believed about me was going to be used against me. The only thing came to mind was, does she know Andrea Swimmer? Because it was already obvious to me I didn't have the language skills because I had been tortured to put together a sentence about it, but it was already obvious to me that Andrea had been hired by Braunstein as a sex slur to cover up how I had been made deaf. So if somebody said anything about how I'd been made deaf, there would be a sex slur. They even had this guy named Exler, Michael Exler. He was a partner of Natanya, who's fat now. He liked German girls. Miles Kirshner, who lived by WQED. and Central Catholic. They were the sort of Jews who rip off the museums, smuggle a lot of marijuana into the country, steal nuclear bombs, and get federal positions. The sort of Jews who hire sex slurs for potential rivals and beat gangs to beat their brains in. Sort of Jews who claim their house was robbed to collect on insurance or burned down their business to collect on insurance. It didn't matter. They were notorious for being happy-go-lucky. Some of them. Martin Edelman was notorious for being happy-go-lucky. He'd steal skis and never give them back. He'd tell lies off the top of his head. Everybody knew him for a scam, and they would always be applauding him because he was so entertaining. He was like a Trump. He once said something about, oh, I can't believe there was a band before Paul McCartney formed Wings. He was alluding to the deep cryptology of the Quarrymen. My name was O'Quarry. They hired the Pitmen to torture me. So they were showing that they were deep, man. And authenticity is something that, there's a 10 Little Indians version where the guy who did it says, oh, it's always the least suspected, and that would be me. Lenin's Tune show has Lenin and Reagan on all sides because they are the great victims. Wow. And you can enumerate a menu of suspicious situations about Lenin and Reagan involving me that show the nature of the guerrilla theater fabrication that went on. My being in D.C. with his attorneys when he claims he was shot and giving me a brochure about the magic of Hollywood, basically, really happened. So Lenin pulled a Houdini, and what the least suspected is the one who all the victims come crawling to because her authenticity is sworn. And on the left, they swear to her. Swan, they say when they see her. Swan, they say when they see her. A swan is born. And it's the spirit of Yasukuni Shrine, Yoko Ono, arisen to lead the victims to the new FDR. Yoko Ono of Tojo, Yoko Ono of Tojo, Swan. Swan, they say. Now, there's something I call misconsent, for lack of a word. It's when you are misinformed and give consent. Why? Okay. Oh no. Imagine being a child and you have a beautiful name and a lot of potential, and suddenly something grabs on it. And you get these letters that say James McRyland Curry and Gail Carolyn Burston. And you go digging through beatings, being dragged through glass and gassed and kidnapped and stolen cars with this name clawing at yours. And she turns out to be working for Robert Fripp and Yoko Ono. That much at least we know. That much at least we can prove. That they have me in arrested mode. And the laugh is that they'll represent in their victory the exact opposite of what's true. And they have murdered me. I have Parkinson's. I'm really deteriorating relatively quickly at only 63 years old. Most of the people in my family had long lives at 63 ahead of them. So another thing that sort of illustrates how difficult it is to get any kind of word out from Pittsburgh, they have it locked down like Treblinka, was that Leslie is valedictorian of the Ellis Girls School, managed to get a 45 made of a piano music, which she gave to me as a gift, which was nice of her. Nobody else in the city, under any circumstances, could get a record made, ever. It was a major miracle to do so, and you had to go to New York somewhere or Detroit. But Leanne Ellison Norman was in the Friends Meeting House draft advisory. And the Friends meeting had a man named Brian Richmond who works with Abby Ali, whose Will Zell Brome was up on Mount Desert Island talking about AIDS at Temple University before it happened, running the Two Virgins Pussy Bowl war game, where authenticity to the hallucinations of Abby Martin or injecting the queer bait for Lennon, this sort of thing. He came to Pittsburgh with a girl who was first seen dancing with Lisa Cassidy, the girl with needle tracks and the tattoo of the Grim Reaper pointing at her vagina. She worked at a place with Richard Borden known as the Maxwell House. She was at the College of the Atlantic, whose board of trustees has John Stockwell, the CIA agent who used to follow me around on my birthday with the Gurdjieff people who Fripp introduced me to. Martin Sheen was a major factor in support for Thomas Merton Center's agenda. And everybody listens to Sheen and about the rumors, how the slur that covers up how I was deafened. Vince Irene's flag of poverty. So they were selling it as a boy who was using girls. That's how they were selling it. But they were conspicuously organizing these crimes and giving me nowhere to sleep at night, except if the girl took me into her room. I was homeless. I mean, they were exploiting me, but saying I was exploiting them. It was the typical trick of UW dialectical. And it was bad blood about population, distribution of wealth, and so on. So they have somebody who takes care of a homeless man on his couch, complaining about overpopulation, saying, what are we going to do when we get old? Who's going to take care of us? So they have a union girl come and latch on to the little boy who's a utility function, is what James Child calls me, who was working with Trump. So the arrested mode is one where you can't get the truth out past the barbed wires. And they won't let anybody know what they did to you. You're a victim of war, but they say, study war no more. In other words, don't look at what we did to Queer Bay. Don't look at Abby Martin's professional lockout of information about Gail Burston and Yoko Ono. So one of my neighbors worked for Max Trucks, and he took me downtown to the good ship Lollipop or Raleigh for Arlen Specter when he was around. It was the Notch Babies. It was a sly idea. It was the house where they staged the phony intercept. Migna Wen used to come over. And Tom O'Connor, her friend who owned the Flynn construction band, where they tried to frame me as a reckless driver, had all of the drawers open with his feet in the drawers in the hallway, and he's talking on his phone, right, his walkie-talkie phone. And then they take me out to this architecture place down by Reynolds Street and Mellon Park, where they had me print copies of the plans while the Zionists looked at me. I used to work at Fogg Medical Library where Magic Fingers Erlin and Donald Merlin, Mur was the girl who worked with me, Erlin, Magic Fingers Erlin. He was in magic and, the old books about medicine. And he used to say, if you're opposed to vivisection, do you think that they should be able to use the books of knowledge that they got from Nazi Germany? I said, when you talk about life-saving vivisection, like maybe they can, like dissection, maybe they can just make one and make and tape it. And all of the Jewish people were looking at me like, oh boy, did you ever just say it? But the Notch babies were a group of people who were born on February 29th, and the books have a cutoff day of February 28th, from March 1st to February 28th. So they don't get they get a ride on the good ship lollipop from my inspector.